Russia's rejection of Donald Trump's peace plan has sent shockwaves through the international community, sparking intense debate about the future of the conflict and the global balance of power. Was this move by President Vladimir Putin a calculated step to assert dominance, or a critical misstep that could isolate Russia further on the world stage? At a time when military pressures and economic sanctions weigh heavily on Moscow, this decision raises urgent questions. Is Russia prepared to bear the consequences, or does Putin have a hidden strategy yet to be revealed? As global alliances shift, with the West solidifying its stance and China cautiously observing from the sidelines, this development could redefine the contours of international diplomacy. In rejecting the proposal, has Putin sealed Russia's fate, or is this a bold play that will reshape the narrative? This video dives into this controversial decision's motivations, immediate repercussions, and potential long-term impacts. Recent diplomatic developments shed light on a bold proposal from Donald Trump's advisors to end the Ukraine conflict. According to Reuters, the plan, co-authored by retired Army Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, seeks to freeze the current battle lines while removing the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO. This strategy intricately ties military aid to participation in negotiations, offering a framework designed to balance competing interests and de-escalate the ongoing crisis. The peace proposal features several ambitious elements, including establishing demilitarized zones along the existing front lines, suspending Ukraine's NATO membership aspirations, and implementing U.S. security guarantees. Additionally, it suggests that weapons supplies to Ukraine would be conditional upon active participation in diplomatic discussions, move intended to incentivize dialogue between the warring parties. In response, Russian President Vladimir Putin has taken a resolute stance, reiterating his commitment to Russia's core demands. His rejection of the plan underscores a refusal to make significant territorial concessions while emphasizing Ukraine's permanent neutrality as a non-negotiable condition. According to Putin, any ceasefire or peace agreement must reflect realities on the ground, including Moscow's current control over vast swaths of claimed territories and Ukraine's abandonment of its NATO ambitions. A central sticking point in the proposed negotiations revolves around territorial control. Moscow presently occupies 70 to 80% of the disputed regions, leaving approximately 10,000 square miles still under Ukrainian governance. This territorial divide adds complexity to any potential agreement, as it touches on Ukraine's sovereignty and integrity, a sensitive issue for both Kiev and its Western allies. Putin's conditions for peace talks, first articulated in June, remain stringent. These demands include Ukraine's formal exclusion from NATO, the withdrawal of its forces from contested areas, and the recognition of Russian territorial annexations. In addition, Russia has called for broader discussions on regional security guarantees, positioning itself as a central player in reshaping the European security landscape. Trump's proposal highlights the stark challenges of brokering a resolution as the diplomatic stalemate continues. It reflects a calculated attempt to navigate a complex web of military strategies, territorial disputes, and international alliances while testing the limits of what each side is willing to concede in the pursuit of peace. The international community's response has been marked by skepticism and concern. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed reservations about Trump's approach, acknowledging the desire for a quick resolution while warning against hasty decisions that could compromise Ukraine's sovereignty. Western allies have shown reluctance toward proposals that might undermine Ukraine's territorial integrity. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Analysis suggests that Putin's rejection of even Trump's favorable terms indicates a more expansive strategic agenda. This rejection has particularly significant implications, as Trump's victory was initially viewed as Russia's potential plan for victory in Ukraine. Putin's strategic miscalculation in rejecting peace initiatives has fundamentally altered Russia's diplomatic position in the global arena. The decision reflects a significant misreading of international resolve and Western capabilities to sustain long-term support for Ukraine. Russia's diplomatic influence has diminished significantly since the invasion. Recent polls show that 44% of Ukrainians now support peace talks, while 61% oppose territorial concessions. This shifting sentiment, coupled with Russia's isolation, has eroded Moscow's negotiating power. The Kremlin's traditional diplomatic tactics have proven less effective, as evidenced by the unprecedented unity among Western nations. The erosion of Russia's negotiating position in the ongoing Ukraine conflict is increasingly evident through a combination of military, economic, and diplomatic challenges. On the military front, Western nations have not only maintained but significantly increased their aid to Ukraine, undermining Russia's ability to dictate terms on the battlefield. The influx of advanced weaponry and training has bolstered Ukraine's defense capabilities, while simultaneously diminishing Moscow's leverage in peace talks. Economically, Russia faces an unprecedented level of sanctions pressure, which has constricted its financial flexibility and limited its ability to sustain prolonged military engagements. These sanctions, implemented with remarkable coordination among Western allies, have disrupted critical sectors of Russia's economy, further complicating its long-term strategic calculations. Diplomatically, Russia's standing has continued to deteriorate. As nations rally around Ukraine, Moscow finds itself increasingly isolated on the world stage. This growing alienation undermines its ability to form coalitions or gain meaningful support from non-aligned states. Compounding these challenges is Russia's annexation of territories it does not fully control, leaving approximately 10,000 square miles under Ukrainian authority. This overreach has not only exposed the limits of Russia's military advances but also weakened its credibility in negotiations, as such claims are seen as unsustainable and unrealistic. The situation is further exacerbated by the remarkable unity displayed by Western nations, a development that has exceeded Moscow's expectations. Germany, traditionally cautious in military matters, has made a historic policy shift, committing €100 billion to bolster its defense capabilities. NATO has also strengthened its cooperation, with member states expanding their support for Ukraine in both material and strategic terms. This alignment among Western allies has extended beyond military aid, encompassing the swift and coordinated implementation of sanctions that target Russia's economy with precision and resolve. The Institute for the Study of War reports that Putin's maximalist objectives in Ukraine remain unchanged, despite mounting evidence that this position is increasingly untenable. This rigidity has prompted Western nations to increase their support, with European leaders emphasizing that Russia must not prevail. The miscalculation extends beyond military considerations. Central Asian leaders have publicly rebuked Putin's approach, with Kazakhstan notably refusing to recognize the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk republics. This represents a significant shift in regional dynamics, further isolating Russia from its traditional sphere of influence. Strategic realignment has occurred across multiple fronts, with Western nations demonstrating unprecedented coordination in their response. The European Union's decision to finance the purchase and delivery of weapons marks a historic departure from its traditional stance, indicating a fundamental shift in the geopolitical landscape that Putin appears to have underestimated. The mounting internal pressures within Russia reveal significant challenges that may have influenced Putin's rejection of Trump's peace proposal. These pressures span across military, economic, and social dimensions, creating a complex web of domestic constraints. Russia's military capabilities have been severely degraded by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, reaching a critical juncture by late 2023. The toll on personnel and equipment has been devastating, significantly weakening Moscow's ability to sustain prolonged military engagements. Estimates suggest that Russian forces have suffered between 66,000 and 120,000 personnel killed in action, with total casualties, including wounded and missing, climbing to an alarming 315,000. These figures represent a substantial depletion of the manpower Russia had at the outset of the war, leaving its armed forces stretched thin and struggling to maintain operational effectiveness. The losses extend beyond personnel, with equipment attrition painting an equally dire picture. Key categories of Russian military hardware have experienced crippling reductions. Armored vehicles, an estimated 8,800 units have been destroyed, captured, or rendered inoperable, significantly diminishing Russia's armored warfare capabilities. Black Sea Fleet. Russia has lost 20 vessels, including high-value assets critical to its naval dominance in the region. These losses have not only weakened its maritime operations but also exposed vulnerabilities in its naval defenses. Total personnel impact. The cumulative effect of casualties and resource depletion has reduced Russia's military capacity to approximately 87% of its pre-war strength, a staggering blow to its overall readiness. Despite these setbacks, military analysts suggest that Russia may be able to sustain its current operations through 2024. However, the longer-term outlook is far bleaker. Critical limitations in weapons and munitions production are expected to emerge by 2025 to 2026, further constraining Russia's ability to wage war at the current intensity. These challenges underscore the mounting pressure on Moscow to reconsider its strategic objectives. With a steadily diminishing arsenal and a shrinking pool of experienced personnel, Russia faces the prospect of prolonged attrition both on the battlefield and within its domestic military-industrial complex. This trajectory raises pressing questions about the Kremlin's capacity to adapt and endure as the conflict drags on. Russia's economy, while appearing resilient on the surface, is showing clear signs of severe underlying strain. Although GDP reportedly grew by 3.0-3.5% in 2023, this growth conceals deeper systemic issues that threaten the country's long-term economic health. A significant portion of this growth has been driven by a shift toward war production, prioritizing military needs over civilian economic stability. This redirection of resources has come at a steep cost, undermining broader economic diversification and sustainability. The mass emigration of skilled workers, particularly in critical sectors such as technology, has further compounded the problem. By 2023, an estimated 100,000 IT professionals had left the country, leaving a noticeable gap in talent and innovation. This brain drain not only reduces productivity in key industries, but also diminishes Russia's ability to compete in the global marketplace. Meanwhile, the deterioration of civilian infrastructure has reached alarming levels, with nearly 70% of municipal systems reportedly affected. This decay highlights the broader neglect of domestic priorities as resources are funneled towards sustaining the ongoing conflict. Adding to these challenges, the Russian central bank has issued warnings of economic overheating. Inflationary pressures and resource constraints have created an unstable economic environment, prompting experts to predict a shift to a low-growth trajectory starting in 2024. This forecast is further darkened by the weight of Western sanctions, which have increasingly isolated Russia from global markets. The combination of restricted trade, declining foreign investment, and limited access to advanced technology has placed additional stress on an already struggling economy. Taken together, these factors suggest that Russia's economic future is fraught with significant risks. Despite the appearance of short-term stability, the underlying vulnerabilities could severely undermine its resilience in the years ahead, particularly as the economic toll of prolonged conflict continues to mount. Public sentiment in Russia shows growing signs of war fatigue. A February 2024 poll revealed that 35% of Russians reported a decreased standard of living over the past 2 years. More significantly, over half of the respondents expressed negative emotions about the special military operation. The anti-war sentiment has manifested in unexpected ways. When Boris Nadezhdin, a peace-advocating candidate, gathered surprising support for his presidential bid, authorities responded by blocking his registration. This reaction suggests growing concern about public opposition to the conflict. The combination of military exhaustion, economic strain, and shifting public opinion creates a challenging domestic environment for Putin's regime. Recent data indicates that Russia has enough resources to continue the war at its current intensity for only 2 to 3 more years, suggesting that the rejection of Trump's peace proposal may have significant long-term consequences for domestic stability. The diplomatic landscape has undergone a seismic shift following Russia's rejection of peace initiatives, creating new patterns of international alignment and cooperation. The European Union's response demonstrates unprecedented unity, with member states coordinating their actions through massive sanctions packages and military support for Ukraine. The ongoing conflict has reshaped the global political landscape, dividing nations into 3 distinct camps: those aligned with Russia, those supporting Ukraine, and a group of non-aligned countries maintaining a position of diplomatic neutrality. Western nations have displayed an unprecedented level of unity, with the European Union adopting 15 comprehensive sanctions packages, targeting not only Russia but also companies in China, India, Iran, Serbia, and the UAE. This robust coordination underscores the West's determination to apply economic and diplomatic pressure on Moscow, while also expanding the reach of its countermeasures beyond traditional boundaries. The solidarity among pro-Ukraine nations extends well beyond the usual Western allies. Asian nations such as Singapore, South Korea, and Japan have joined the effort, providing both military aid and diplomatic backing to Ukraine. This broad-based support reflects a shared commitment to upholding international norms and countering aggression. In contrast, the pro-Russia bloc has relied on key partnerships with countries like Iran and Belarus. Iran has become a critical supplier of weapons to Moscow, while Belarus offers logistical and political support. These alliances, however, highlight the limits of Russia's international appeal, as it leans heavily on a narrower set of partners. Meanwhile, a significant number of non-aligned nations continue to tread a careful path of neutrality. These states maintain trade relations with Russia while avoiding overt alignment with either side. This pragmatic approach reflects a desire to balance economic interests with the risks of alienating powerful actors on the global stage. This emerging tripolar dynamic illustrates how the conflict has not only intensified existing alliances but also tested the strategic priorities of nations worldwide. The long-term implications of these divisions will likely shape global geopolitics for years to come. The ongoing conflict has highlighted profound divisions within the BRICS group, challenging its cohesion and unity. Although Russia remains a central member, the responses of other BRICS nations to the war have varied significantly. Brazil, for instance, voted in favor of condemning Russia's actions at the United Nations, signaling a clear disapproval of Moscow's aggression. In contrast, China and India have maintained a stance of strategic neutrality, carefully balancing their diplomatic and economic interests while avoiding overt criticism or support. South Africa, too, has adhered to a non-aligned position, but this approach has drawn widespread criticism, particularly from Western nations, for what some perceive as tacit acquiescence to Russia's actions. These differing positions within BRICS underscore deeper tensions as member states navigate the complexities of their economic ties and the growing international pressure to take a stand. The group's expansion in 2023, intended to bolster its global influence, has only amplified these challenges. The addition of new members has introduced further disagreements, particularly over Russia's conduct, while simultaneously increasing pushback from Western countries wary of BRICS' evolving role on the global stage. Meanwhile, Western nations have demonstrated an unprecedented level of coordination in their response to Russia's aggression. The European Union, in particular, has implemented a series of comprehensive measures aimed at isolating Moscow diplomatically and economically. These include the full suspension of visa facilitation agreements, the rejection of Russian travel documents issued from occupied regions, and rigorous enforcement of coordinated sanctions across member states. The United States and European allies have maintained strong unity, with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen dismissing efforts to circumvent Western financial systems. This coordination extends to military support, with NATO members increasing their presence in Eastern Europe and strengthening deterrence postures. Significant developments in Western coordination include the EU's historic decision to finance weapons purchases and deliveries, marking a fundamental shift in European security policy. The alliance has also expanded its focus to counter sanctions evasion, implementing restrictions on third-country entities supporting Russia's military operations. The diplomatic fallout has resulted in what analysts describe as a structural disjuncture between Western and emerging power approaches to global governance. This divide is particularly evident in areas of trade, security, and institutional reform. Western sanctions following Russia's rejection of peace initiatives have created unprecedented economic pressure on Moscow's financial system. The U.S. Treasury Department reports that sanctions and export controls have significantly damaged Russia's economy, limiting its access to crucial financing and materials. The sanctions imposed on Russia have had a profound impact, severely constraining the country's economic stability. The loss of access to approximately $280 billion in foreign reserves has left a noticeable dent in its financial system. Key economic indicators highlight the extent of this damage. Energy revenue decline. Between January and October 2023, Russia experienced a 40% drop in energy revenues, a critical blow to its primary source of income. GDP growth impact. The nation's GDP growth projections have been slashed by 7 to 10% compared to pre-war expectations, underscoring the long-term economic fallout. Ruble depreciation. The ruble has lost 20% of its value against the dollar, reflecting declining investor confidence and the strain of international isolation. These metrics paint a stark picture of the challenges facing Russia's economy as it grapples with the compounded effects of sanctions and the financial burden of sustained conflict. Trade restrictions have profoundly reshaped Russia's global economic relationships, pushing the country closer to economic isolation. The European Union has implemented sweeping bans, including over €48 billion in goods that would have been exported to Russia and €91.2 billion in goods that would have been imported. These measures have had a cascading impact across multiple sectors, including a 90% reduction in oil exports to the EU and maritime transport restrictions affecting approximately 2,800 vessels. Further compounding the situation is Russia's suspension from the SWIFT financial messaging system, which has severely hindered its ability to conduct international transactions efficiently. As a result, Russia has been forced to retreat from global markets, with its trade patterns becoming increasingly dependent on a smaller and more limited group of trading partners. This shift reflects the growing challenges of navigating the dual pressures of sanctions and the economic fallout of the ongoing conflict. Russia faces substantial long-term economic challenges that threaten its future growth potential. The World Bank and IMF project concerning trends economic growth is expected to fall below 1% annually in the long term, while structural weaknesses continue to emerge. The exodus of skilled workers, particularly in the technology sector, has created significant gaps in the workforce, with approximately 10% of IT professionals having left the country. The consequences of isolation extend beyond immediate financial impacts. Russia's exclusion from global markets restricts its access to new technologies and innovations. This technological isolation, combined with the loss of Western investment, has created what analysts describe as a demodernization of the Russian economy. The financial sector faces particular challenges with 70% of the Russian banking system's assets now under sanctions. This restriction of access to international financial markets has forced Moscow to rely increasingly on domestic resources, limiting its ability to finance future development. The energy sector, traditionally Russia's economic backbone, shows signs of long-term vulnerability. The costs of developing energy infrastructure have increased significantly, while global shifts toward renewable alternatives create additional uncertainty for Russia's future revenue streams. The evolving military landscape on the ground sheds light on factors that may have influenced Russia's rejection of Trump's peace proposal. Recent analyses indicate that Ukraine has successfully reclaimed 54% of the territory previously occupied by Russian forces. Though Russia still controls approximately 18% of Ukraine's total land area. These shifts underscore the fluidity of the conflict, with both sides experiencing gains and losses across key regions. The frontline situation reveals notable dynamics in territorial control. On the Eastern Front, Russian forces have maintained offensive pressure, opening a new front in the Kharkiv region. In southern areas, Ukrainian counter-operations have intensified, while the Crimean Peninsula has seen an increase in Ukrainian strikes targeting critical infrastructure. Incremental Russian advances near Kupiansk, Kreminna, and Pokrovsk have come at a high cost, with Russian troops enduring heavy casualties. The human toll of the conflict has been devastating, with over 30,000 civilian deaths reported and 3.7 million individuals internally displaced. Resource limitations are placing mounting pressure on Russia's military capabilities. Artillery production for 2024 is expected to be capped at 1.3 million rounds of 152mm ammunition, far below the levels needed to sustain prolonged operations. Production of 122mm ammunition is similarly constrained, with only 800,000 rounds anticipated annually. Depleted reserves of stored ammunition further exacerbate these challenges, while equipment losses have eroded 80% of Russia's pre-war operational capacity. Compounding these issues, Russia's military-industrial complex is struggling under the weight of sanctions and resource constraints. The production of advanced weapons systems and critical components has been particularly affected, with manufacturing capabilities projected to plateau by 2025. These factors collectively paint a grim picture of Russia's ability to sustain its military ambitions, highlighting the strategic vulnerabilities that may have shaped its response to diplomatic overtures. Russia's strategic position shows signs of deterioration across multiple dimensions. The military's battlefield performance has fallen short of expectations since the invasion's onset, with poor planning and logistics issues persisting through 2023. The situation is compounded by significant personnel losses, with estimates indicating that Russian forces suffered more than 100,000 casualties in just 6 months. The effectiveness of Russian forces has been further compromised by their inability to conduct combined arms operations beyond the company level. This limitation, coupled with the demonstrated vulnerability of Russian logistical systems, has created substantial operational constraints. Commander-in-Chief Valery Zaluzhny's November 2023 assessment of a military stalemate reflects the broader strategic challenges facing Russian forces. The recent loss of Avdiivka, while representing a tactical victory, came at a significant cost in terms of personnel and resources. The sustainability of Russia's military effort faces mounting challenges. While current operations can be maintained through 2024, analysts project significant material challenges emerging throughout 2025. This timeline aligns with assessments indicating that Russia lacks the industrial capacity for sustained high-intensity conflict under continued Western sanctions. China's diplomatic stance in the Ukraine conflict has evolved significantly, reflecting a delicate balance between supporting Russia and maintaining global credibility. The bilateral trade between China and Russia reached a record high of $190 billion in 2022, demonstrating the complex nature of their economic relationship amid global tensions. China's peace initiative, introduced on the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, presents a 12-point proposal that has generated varied responses from the international community. The proposal stresses the importance of respecting territorial integrity, opposing the use of nuclear weapons, calling for a cessation of hostilities, and encouraging peace negotiations. While some aspects of the plan have been welcomed, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has responded cautiously, acknowledging certain points but making it clear that any peace settlement that does not include a full Russian withdrawal from Ukrainian territory is unacceptable. The effectiveness of China's initiative, however, is hindered by perceptions of partiality. Many countries, including Ukraine, view China as having a pro-Russia stance, which undermines the credibility of its proposal in the eyes of those seeking a more balanced mediator. As a result, despite China's diplomatic efforts, the initiative faces significant challenges in garnering widespread support or achieving meaningful impact. The economic relationship between China and Russia reveals significant asymmetry, particularly in trade dynamics. As of 2023, Chinese exports account for 38% of Russia's total imports, highlighting Russia's heavy reliance on China for goods. In contrast, Russian exports constitute only 5.1% of China's total imports, reflecting China's limited dependence on Russian resources. Despite this imbalance, the total trade volume between the two nations has reached a record $240 billion, indicating substantial growth in their economic interactions. However, China's economic support for Russia faces notable limitations. Many Chinese companies have been reluctant to violate Western sanctions, with some suspending or scaling back their operations in Russia. In the financial sector, caution is even more pronounced. China has opted not to join Russia's SPETS financial transfer system, an alternative to the SWIFT network, signaling a strategic hesitancy to deepen economic ties in ways that could provoke Western powers. This careful approach underscores the constraints on China's support despite the growing trade relationship. The relationship faces mounting pressures despite public displays of unity. China's military support remains limited, notably avoiding direct weapons supplies while providing dual-use technologies. This careful positioning reflects Beijing's broader strategy of balancing its relationship with Russia against potential Western backlash. Recent developments underscore the increasing asymmetry in China's partnership with Russia. China has secured discounted access to Russian commodities while adopting a more selective approach to its support. This growing power imbalance is evident in several ways. Chinese exports of military-applicable technology to Russia have surged, reflecting China's strategic leverage. At the same time, Russia's economic dependence on China has intensified, with the yuan playing an increasingly prominent role in the Russian economy, further cementing China's influence. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's statements at the UN General Assembly emphasized China's position of having no selfish interests in the war. However, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell notes that China continues providing materials being applied directly to the Russian war machine. The relationship faces what analysts term a Gordian knot of complementarity, expediency, and anxiety. While China benefits from discounted Russian resources, concerns about Western secondary sanctions and reputational damage create significant constraints on the partnership's development. The landscape of potential peace negotiations has evolved significantly since Trump's transition team presented their initial proposal. With multiple actors now offering varying approaches to conflict resolution, the path forward appears increasingly complex yet potentially promising. Recent diplomatic initiatives have produced several distinct approaches to ending the conflict. The EU has committed over €82 billion in support to Ukraine, while emphasizing a comprehensive peace based on the UN Charter. Key proposals currently under consideration include Trump Team Proposal. This proposal suggests freezing battle lines and removing NATO membership as an option for Ukraine. It has been rejected. EU Initiative. This plan remains active and advocates for a resolution based on the UN Charter. China's plan features a 12-point peace formula, currently under review. The European Council has maintained its support for President Zelensky's peace plan, which includes delivery of ammunition, missiles, and air defense systems. This approach differs significantly from Trump's advisor's proposal, which suggests freezing current battle lines and taking NATO membership off the table. Several potential compromise scenarios have emerged from recent diplomatic exchanges. Trump's incoming Russia-Ukraine envoy, Keith Kellogg, has outlined a plan that includes freezing current battle lines, providing U.S. security guarantees, and conditional weapons supply based on negotiation participation. The Russian position, however, remains firm on certain conditions. Putin has explicitly stated that any ceasefire must reflect battlefield realities and include Ukraine's withdrawal from claimed territories. This stance has created significant challenges for negotiators, as approximately 10,000 square miles of disputed territory remain under Ukrainian control. Emerging compromise elements in recent discussions have focused on a potential incremental approach to achieving peace. This strategy prioritizes addressing manageable aspects initially, such as establishing ceasefires, facilitating prisoner exchanges, and implementing neutral monitoring mechanisms. The timeline for a potential resolution remains uncertain, shaped by several critical factors. The EU has extended its restrictive measures against individuals undermining Ukraine's territorial integrity until September 2024, signaling a long-term commitment to sustaining pressure on Russia. Current assessments indicate that key determinants of the timeline include electoral transitions in major powers, the sustainability of military resources, the impact of economic sanctions, and the evolution of diplomatic relationships. Recent developments indicate that Russia might be open to negotiations, if initiated by Trump after his potential return to office in January 2025. However, Biden's recent decision to allow Ukraine to use longer-range American weapons has added complexity to the diplomatic landscape. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Analysis suggests that Trump's approach might prioritize quick cessation of hostilities before establishing a comprehensive peace enforcement framework. This could result in what experts describe as something in the middle of war and peace, not like in Donbas before 2022, but probably hotter and more unstable. The path to resolution faces several structural challenges. Ukraine's position has hardened since earlier negotiations, particularly regarding NATO aspirations. Meanwhile, European powers are increasingly considering scenarios where part of Ukraine might join NATO, though this presents practical challenges without clearly delineated front lines. The military dimension adds another layer of complexity to the timeline. While Russia can maintain current operations through 2024, significant material challenges are projected to emerge in 2025. This timeline aligns with assessments indicating Russia's industrial capacity constraints under continued Western sanctions. European involvement could prove crucial for any sustainable peace agreement. Recent discussions between French President Macron and Polish Prime Minister Tusk regarding potential troop deployment after a ceasefire highlight the evolving nature of European security commitments. However, German Chancellor Scholz's recent outreach to Putin has drawn criticism from allies, underscoring the challenges in coordinating a unified European approach. Russia's rejection of Trump's peace proposal marks a critical juncture that could define the conflict's ultimate resolution. Military exhaustion, economic strain, and diplomatic isolation have created unprecedented pressure on Putin's regime, while Western unity has proven more resilient than Moscow anticipated. These factors, combined with China's careful positioning and Russia's dwindling resources, suggest significant challenges for Putin's strategy through 2025. The battlefield situation remains complex, with neither side able to achieve decisive victory, despite substantial losses. Russia faces mounting internal pressures as sanctions bite deeper into its economy and military capabilities show signs of strain. Western resolve demonstrated through coordinated sanctions and sustained military support for Ukraine has fundamentally altered the conflict's trajectory. Peace prospects now hinge on several critical factors: Russia's ability to sustain military operations under increasing resource constraints, Western commitment to supporting Ukraine, and potential diplomatic breakthroughs following key electoral transitions. Putin's rejection of current peace initiatives might prove costly as Russia's position continues to weaken, potentially forcing a future return to negotiations under less favorable conditions. What do you think about Trump's efforts to end the ongoing conflicts? Please share your opinion in the comment section of the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next videos.